There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is your mountain. Hey everybody, welcome once again to another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. I am your host, as almost always, not always, I can't say always, not always, but I am your host, David Wilms. Nephi Cole, my hand is gently caressing your inner thigh.
That's pretty disturbing.
But technically accurate, wasn't it?
It was. When you put your hand on my knee, it really troubled me. But I'm holding this microphone here like Henry Rollins style, and if you do that again, I will straight up smack you just like Henry Rollins would.
There was nothing you could do because you have that mic.
I'm going to swing it around and just boom. Have you ever?
I would put I had my left hand on your thigh. I would have put my right hand on McGrady's thigh, but no mic tonight on the mic.
So he's not going to be able to join me in the lawsuit.
He's not here. He's probably doing something with his family.
He's probably working right now.
Yeah, he probably is working right now. And then spending time with his family. Yeah. Two things that we can't say we're doing, which maybe is embarrassing. We're working.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're joined tonight. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, but before I do, so just so you know, we've got the brains. I don't know if brains and brawn or both or whatever, the brains and the muscle behind the government affairs team. Maybe we have the government affairs team from Safari Club International.
Two critical pieces.
Yeah, two-thirds.
Two-thirds of it. All right. Anyway, introduce yourselves.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us. Ben Cassidy recently started up at Safari Club International as the Director of Government Affairs.
Awesome.
And you came from
Department of the Interior.
I want to talk about that more later.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's.
Great. Cyrus.
Thank you guys. Cyrus Baird, I'm the manager of government relations, so I handle all of our state government relations, much like Nephi. But Nephi has maybe a few states. I've got 50. So.
Yeah, well, it just builds character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
49. We pretty much stopped hunting in California.
Yeah, we don't do anything in there.
Yes.
So.
It's not a competition, but I'm more impressed with that than with that.
Man, Safari Club International, I think Dave, you always talk about like it's a special group because if somebody's going to bat for hunters, like legally going to bat for hunters, it's probably you guys.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, across the board. I mean, that's our motto, right, is first for hunters, which is what makes it really cool to be there is if it affects hunting, we're going to be involved in it.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I joined Safari Club a number of years ago, and the reason I did, the singular reason, was so earlier in my career I'd been a state wildlife agency attorney, so I'd represented the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, and finding sporting organizations, finding hunting organizations to come to bat legally on behalf of the hunting community was very, very hard. But the one organization that was always there to have the state's back and have hunters' backs was Safari Club. And I felt like that was a critical piece to preserve our heritage, you have to be able to, and we'll talk about what you do on the government affairs side, you have to have people in state houses and in the Capitol working on behalf of hunters. But we've got 3 branches of government, and one of them was completely neglected. I don't want to say completely, but it's frequently neglected by the sporting community, and that's the judicial branch. And so many things happen in our courts that impact hunters. And it's been Safari Club that's been there for years and years standing up for hunters.
I mean, before I came on, just knowing Safari Club, it's like I love and obviously all in on the goal of having, as much access as possible, the healthiest herds. But when you're talking about a group, that's doing those things and you're leaving out the hunter, that's not the full cycle, right? You have a broken, North American model if you don't include the hunter in that model. We can have all the access, all the hunting opportunities, but if we're not hunting it, then that ends, the opportunities that we have.
So you're really trying to defend the ability of the hunter to continue to be in the field, or
Sure.
not just defend, but
Protect the freedom to
protect
hunt.
protect the
that's
freedom.
That's our tagline. So.
Yeah. So that's just from a history standpoint. That's how I got to know Safari Club. And are we allowed to talk about? You kind of. You told us beforehand you gotta bounce a little early. This podcast will run a little bit shorter because you got to go support a colleague. Are we allowed to talk about
yeah,
why?
absolutely.
It's public,
Yeah,
yeah.
Please do.
Our legal team is fantastic, and the head of our legal team, Anna Seidman, is being awarded the Gary Taylor Conservation Award. Tonight's the first ever time that they've given that award out, and I would think most folks that listen to this know who Gary was, or
He was
at least
personal friend of
Oh
mine.
yeah, I mean, Titan in our field for sure. But and I think he'd be ecstatic that she's getting this.
So tell
for
his
first.
story really quick.
Well, Gary's. I mean, he
Nutshell.
He started out with Maryland Department of Fish and Wildlife, whatever their DNR is called. Worked for Ducks for a while, Fish and Wildlife for a little bit. Then he was at AFWA for, years.
Ever.
Yeah. I mean, so many critical pieces of legislation in the past probably 15, 20 years he's had his hands on, or did have his hands on. And he tragically passed away, I think, right before this meeting last year.
Right.
So, about a year and a half ago.
And so this is the first ever
Mhm.
Gary Taylor Award.
And she'll be receiving that award.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's exciting. I've worked with her a lot over the years.
So, Dave, you were involved with Safari Club International's legal team, right?
Yeah, I spent a number of years. On. They have a legal task force where there's citizens, lawyers from around the country that serve on a board to provide advice and counsel to the attorneys of Safari Club on cases to get involved with, and advice on every step.
So when you guys do that,
way.
do those attorneys come to you, or do you guys visit? Do you guys reach out to those attorneys? Do you know?
I think it's a mix, really.
And the reason I'm asking, because how Dave got on there, I'm curious.
Oh, for getting onto the task force, recruited. Only the finest, right?
That's what I like to
I mean,
think.
even a guy that, let's say a guy loses a lion, Dave, he just misplaces a lion.
This is such
You
a
have that
random
guy?
example.
I don't know.
Now, where's this coming from? Let's circle back to that. Let's talk more about what
Did you
these
lo-
guys
did you
do.
not-
Wait, there's a that to that?
Did you not lose somebody's lion?
I didn't lose somebody's lion. I helped somebody recover a lost lion.
Oh.
You know this story.
He was also,
I do know the story, but
for
I-
the record, trashing on you earlier about, and we'll maybe talk about that offline too. But in the hunting and shooting sports
He
committee.
knows. I told him.
Okay.
I heard he was. I heard he was at a meeting.
hunting with the same rifle for years and
This
using
is
the
not.
same
This is not being trashed.
crate of ammo.
Yeah, I heard he got up and gave a presentation today, and
And the first thing he said was,
just threw me
"Oh,
under
yeah.
the bus.
"Oh yeah,
Yeah.
what are friends for?"
Where's
Yeah.
the love?
Hey, he knows.
Yeah, no, I heard because he told me. He was
He's
pretty
also
proud of it.
not ashamed of this fact. The fact that Dave has used the same rifle since he's 17. This is not
14.
a point of
no 17. Yeah.
This is not something that's no. He's proud of this, and it's part of his shtick that I appreciate. Because I'm not we're opposite.
It's
We're
who I am.
opposite sides of the spectrum, Dave and I. So the fact that we
So-
agree on so much is tells you that it's true.
All right. So we'll come back to if there's time, we'll come back to this whole line. Because actually it involves a client that, it was referred to me through my time with Safari Club.
You could just quickly do it. It's just such a good story.
No, we'll tee it up. We'll come back to it. I want to
right.
talk to our guests about what they do. And what they're if we have time, I'll talk about it.
Losing the line. I like the story.
So, Ben, you were at Interior before.
Yep.
What were you doing at Interior?
So I started up there in 2017 as a senior deputy director for external and intergovernmental affairs.
That's
Which fits on a business card.
Long
when you
time.
print
I
it
was
small
like, you have to have an 8.5 by 11 business card.
It's a long way of saying that I was basically point person for Sportsman's Conservation Community. So I previously worked over at the National Rifle Association. Donald Trump was elected president. Saw Secretary Zinke, or then Congressman Zinke's Senate confirmation hearing, where he really talked about the hunter being the centerpiece, the critical tool in the conservation toolkit. And I hadn't really seen anyone in that sort of position, speak into a mic in front of all the senators that were there to confirm him, saying that. So that really got me excited. I've had an opportunity to go over there, so I went full board to find a way over there, and was really lucky and blessed to not only go on board there, but be able to work on all things hunting and fishing.
And legitimately, that's how that was the mission over there. You feel like that was legit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can't I can't tell you how cool it was, like having worked in different jobs, having a boss that just gives you full cover on it. Like, then you wake up, you have ideas, you go after them as long as they're benefiting hunters. You know, we want more access, we want more opportunities. Just make that happen. And you have full reign to do it, full creativity on it. Enjoy it.
That's kind of an. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask a question. And you can punt and say, no comment. I don't want to answer this. But we see how the media treated the Zinke tenure.
Sure.
Right. And I'm curious from your perspective, what was the hardest part of that? I mean, were there pieces where you just felt like the media was missing the mark on what the secretary was trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I don't think the media normally picks up positives, so you kind of just dig your
in general,
and across the board.
Sure.
I don't think that they're selective on certain issues, right? Across the board, it's going to be
Just
pretty.
depends on who wants this.
Doom and gloom.
Which channel is going to say negative about which person?
Right, and how do we top that?
Yeah.
So I mean, it was kind of just put your head down and do the job and just try to keep on making deliverables for the American people. It was such a cool job in that, I got to travel across the country, go over to places that are off the map, away from like the big cities, and people were really jazzed and excited about what was going on back in D.C. So you go out to the field, feel some warmth and happiness, get a hug out of there, go back to D.C. where you hunker back down with the helmet on and take the beatings. But I mean, it's it's just such a big job at Interior managing our public lands and having that multiple use mandate.
That's tough.
And finding the balance to it.
Yeah,
but I don't think it was just all horse and pony show being there for hunters. I mean, it couldn't be. That was the critical block that elected the president. That's why he put Zinke in there with a mandate to help and be that person. Representing hunters and sportsmen.
You guys were serious about expanding access. I mean,
and still are,
and it's continuing to happen.
Yeah.
It's well done, and thank you, because access. I know access. That's why people. It's the limiting factor in people participating in hunting and the shooting sports is access to opportunity, access to areas.
Yeah, they just opened up 1.4 million
1.4 million. But besides just
stuff.
Physical access, right? We're talking about access in hours. Sunday hunting in Pennsylvania, which Cyrus is working on.
That's awesome.
We're talking about physical access in wounded veterans trying to be able to get out there. Access in how easy is it to buy a tag. All sorts of different ways to look at access.
Access can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah, but in every case, it's the limiting factor. So when we fix that access issue, we get more people involved.
Sure.
Yeah. So one more question before we get off Interior. Tim Williams is your boss, right?
Well, hello, Tim. I was your I was Tim's boss. Yeah.
Oh, you were Tim's boss. Well, I apologize.
But he's the big boss now.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's not what he told me.
And it couldn't be in better hands.
He was your boss, is what I heard.
It's his favorite line.
But he says that about everybody, though. I've heard him. I mean,
he just says, "I am the boss."
If you're listening, I think the secretary reports to Tim Williams.
That's dangerous.
One of my favorite stories, though, like you were talking about getting on the field to hunt and fish. One of my favorite stories about Tim was like you probably know the stories, like fishing in like D.C.
Yep.
Like fishing like downtown.
For shad.
Yeah.
Shad run.
And he fell?
No.
Okay.
No, this was was this the taking him on the subway?
That's
he's got like a million stories.
But here's the thing that's funny to me about that. So like for people that don't think that like leadership and interior is serious, here you have a guy who's in leadership and interior who's like on the green line, like he's going on the green line with like a fishing pole and a
full of shad
to go fish in downtown DC.
Off the Potomac.
Hey, thank you guys who are interior who are doing that.
Yeah.
Because we need people to go up there who don't necessarily want to live in that city,
sure,
but are willing to go up there and fish and carry fish on the subway
and fight the fight.
Yeah. It's very important.
Absolutely.
And so, thank you for being one of those guys. Thank you guys who are listening, who are those guys. It's critical for all of us who care about hunting and shooting sports.
Okay. So you left Interior and went to Safari Club.
Yep. So started up right after the July 4th break.
Mm-hmm. So what's your role there?
Director of Government Affairs. So, overseeing our federal, state, litigation, and international teams. So work out of the D.C. office. It's our global headquarters, even though most of our staff is out in Tucson. So yeah, I'm bored. I mean, most of my days are filled with hitting the halls of Congress so far, hopping on calls with Anna and our councils, working with Cyrus on tracking what's going on in the States.
Yep.
I came on kind of at the end of a bunch of sessions, but still been a lot of activity.
Yep.
Planning out for the next year for everything that's going to be going on across the country. Probably see a lot more zombie legislation rise up from the dead and repeat itself.
Yep.
So
It's like actually hunting zombies because I've got one of those stickers and I'm ready.
Get your zombie tag.
So
I'm ready.
I want to run through some of Cyrus's background, and then I want to hit you. So think about this. We'll circle back to both of you on this question. I want to know three. What are your? Let's talk about kind of your top three issues that you're having to deal with in your job. So give that a little bit of thought, just to make people aware. And maybe it might not be specific, it might be big picture issues, but I'm kind of curious. And some of the challenges. Let's talk about some of the challenges of your job too. But Cyrus, your background. You haven't been with Safari Club for very long either.
My first day was the first day of the North American Conference back in Denver. So March 2nd or 3rd or whatever that was. So I came over from the Council to Advance Hunting and Shooting Sports, where I was there the last 3 or so years, working on recruitment, retention, and reactivation issues.
Awesome.
And you're a huge Alabama fan, right?
Yeah. Roll Tide. Yeah, no. I'm a Clemson Wildlife alum. So
Sorry,
go Tigers.
I just see you on Twitter, and
I'll admit I'm an insufferable Clemson fan during the football season. And I tell people every year, unfollow me if you don't like Clemson or Clemson football, unfollow me.
Didn't think it was just during the. If by football year you mean
I get worse.
10 months.
I get worse
10 months of the season.
Recruiting.
I get worse.
Yeah, it's.
But no, I
there's a peak, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Right around September is when it
flow.
starts to get real bad. So don't follow me.
I usually. So I'm a big University of Wyoming fan, and I usually have a couple of posts about them until week 2 or 3 when they start tanking.
Yeah, when you lose,
and it's all over. Any hope of mid-tier
I think
bowl game that we have to pay our way to get into is over.
You just have to accept, you can't base your love of Wyoming football on wins and losses. You just have to love it all the time, Dave.
It's just the atmosphere and watching.
We got to get you to a Clemson game.
Watching above-average high school players.
We got to get you to a Clemson game.
No, actually, they beat Missouri. Wyoming beat Missouri.
that's big.
Yeah, they did.
That's
huge.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's an old Clemson quarterback.
Yeah. He had a really good game. Couldn't stop him. They couldn't stop turning the ball over, and that made it pretty good. But back to what we're here to talk about. Sorry for the tangent. So you were at the Council to Advance
Hunting and Shooting Sports. Yeah, so I kind of took a weird approach into the wildlife world. Like I said, I was a wildlife student at Clemson, and I think all the way up until maybe the second to last semester, I was going to be a biologist. I worked for Fish and Wildlife, burning, during the summers in northeast North Carolina and banding ducks and all that stuff, and I was going to be in the field. And then actually the guy who was the plenary speaker at the conference that we're at on Monday was my advisor, and he taught a wildlife policy course, and you learn everything from Pittman-Robertson Act and all that legislation that came kind of in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in the conservation world. To real world issues. We talked about CWD and baiting stuff and sage grouse and quite funny, like some of these topics are still pretty relevant. They're not, and this was 10 years ago, and so that kind of flipped it on the head, and I went kind of full. I'd always had this weird politics background. Like I'm a nerd like that. I worked on a bunch of state political races and a couple of governor's races and stuff back in Virginia, and just kind of married the two. And after college, went to work for Ducks Unlimited for a while in their Memphis office, and then up in Bismarck for a little bit, and then
my friend Michael Finley.
Yeah, I know Mike. Yeah,
just a side note. Go ahead.
Yeah, he got there right as I was leaving.
Yeah,
because he was in the Bismarck office.
Love that dude.
Yeah, and then went to D.C. and did some more policy stuff, and then went to the council, and now I'm doing state government relations work with SCI.
So you're like you said at the beginning of this, you're only responsible for 50 states.
Yeah, 50. Yeah. I don't have to do the territories, which is good.
Puerto Rico was, they a year ago or so passed a referendum or whatever it was, asking for statehood, approving statehood internally. So it could be 51 at some
Could
point.
be. And if DC,
We're
52.
prepared.
52.
52.
Yeah, DC. No, that's not changing.
52.
Yeah.
Lots of energy on the House side right now. Lots of energy.
Yeah. So 50 states, Congress.
It's a good number. I like 50.
Yeah.
50 states, Congress, the White House, the administration. Okay. You have 3 people to deal with all of this on behalf of hunters.
Well, I mean, our backbone, and we stand on the shoulders of our 50,000 numbers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have an army
Yeah,
behind
We do.
you.
big
We
time.
do. We have a big
Absolutely.
grassroots army.
So, okay, so I was bringing this up before. What are the 3 biggest issues you're facing right now?
So off the bat, I mean, just what's happened immediately was last week there was the markup in House Natural Resources, 16 bills. It included the CECIL Act. So that was marked up at a committee this past Wednesday. And that's, trophy import ban, focusing in on African countries. Raul Grijalva introduced the legislation, had a hearing back in July, voted on it. Yeah. So tracking that, I imagine it would go to the House floor. So just working on engaging our membership.
Do you see it getting actual floor time on the House?
it
I mean, I don't
could-
see it going anywhere on the Senate side at
No,
all.
no.
I mean, it's DOA. It's not even going to get touched in committee.
It's
But
pure messaging,
Yeah.
I'd say, and we're just getting into silly season with the election just around the corner.
so you think it could slip in there or something?
Yeah, I mean,
Because it's silly enough to get attention.
Well, because they can't pass anything substantive right now because you're getting kind of close to the election. So it's
Right,
an opportunity to get some of that silly stuff in front of it.
get your different coalitions fired up.
Yeah.
Let's define that just because, I mean, we're a Policy Wonk podcast. Let's talk about that silly season. What is it?
It's just like what Dave was saying. It's like you get close to elections, so you're not really doing anything substantive that really has people working together. It's more throwing bombs. What's going to stick? What
Political
can be
grandstanding.
What could be
Yeah.
used in a campaign ad? What
Yeah.
could be put on a flyer?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, we see that all the time. People don't necessarily realize that goes on, right? They think that people are serious about these types of legislation like this, right?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Well, and they might be serious about it, but not serious in the way of building coalitions and doing what's needed to pass a bill. But
The expectation isn't that the bill is going to become law.
Nope.
It's just that you're trying to, basically.
They know, like Mitch McConnell's been really clear, saying, I'm not taking up anything on the floor. We're going to have enough floor time to begin with. I'm not taking up anything that's not going to pass. So
Yeah.
they know already that's not going to pass. Doesn't mean that they don't want to get a vote. I mean, I like to see a vote on it too, just to see where people stand on general hunting issues.
Yeah.
I mean, it's across the board. AWCP letter that we worked with AWCP on.
Can you so just for those that don't
Acronyms.
know,
What,
acronyms, yeah.
Association
No,
of
it's the,
Wildlife,
the
American Wildlife Conservation Partnership.
Yep.
So that's a loose coalition of wildlife conservation groups.
So everybody from National Wildlife Federation to the National Shooting Sports Foundation to the Safari Club International to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
Ducks Unlimited.
Everybody.
Everybody.
Exactly.
all in this group together, working together on consensus, common, important stuff like
just to leverage
reclaiming
influence.
America's wildlife.
Leverage influence.
Right. So it's a way for us to all put our heads together and show support in different issues that are coming up. So if it's going to be like the confirmation of Aurelia Skipwith to be Fish and Wildlife Director,
Yep.
there'll be a letter and different groups will sign on. For the CECIL Act, there was a letter and 34 groups signed on. Folks from Ducks Unlimited that you don't really associate with Africa to Safari Club, which you do. So that showed,
You say they signed on. They signed on and saying.
added their name to the letter saying that we oppose the
Opposing
CECIL
this
Act.
That's right. I wanted that to be important when people
Sure,
said the
that's-
CECIL
yeah.
Act. It was in opposition to this act.
And for more history on the CECIL Act, we did talk about it on an earlier podcast
Yeah.
and kind of broke down.
We'll come back
what
to it,
was
Dave.
going
Don't
on.
worry. It's
Yeah.
about lion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is all
that's
building
just
towards
Just
that.
one cool
It's-
tidbit.
Yeah, it's not all just about a lion, though. Yeah.
There's more to it. With the CECIL Act markup, we had the chance. We had a delegation in town from Botswana who just recently, announced that they're going to be opening up hunting again for the first time since 2013. So had delegation, including their Minister of Environment, so basically the David Bernhardt of Botswana. Met with him in our office, but a few of them wanted to come over afterwards and just see the markup. I was like, I think you guys would just find this interesting if you have a free hour. I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll go over. So they went in, and their minds were just blown. They're like, wait, these people are talking about managing our resources? And then, like, Don Young gets up there talking. He's like, this is ridiculous. And Don Young fashion legend. And they're like, who is that man? We like that man. It's like, that's Don Young, and he likes you too. Yeah, so it was cool to be able to see the markup with them there in attendance.
It's yeah, I think it's interesting. I just was struck by that, how similar that is to things that actually still occur in our country, where we think like individuals who are removed from the locations where the decisions are actually impacting the populace still think that they should get up and grandstand and make decisions for those locations out there in the hinterlands.
It's states' rights.
I was going to say that's almost the perfect segue
on a global level.
Into what I was going to say is one of the top.
Let's talk about states' rights.
That's a perfect segue into what I think is, you said think of the three biggest kind of challenges, and one is, we're here at the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies conference, and one is in state legislatures all across the country. You get state senators and state house members and assembly members, thinking that they know better than the biologists and folks who have PhDs and the wildlife managers and stuff. So it's tough trying to go against them, and then it's tough trying to fight for state agency kind of management authority in all the states. But that's definitely one of the big ones, and you see it all the time too in different forms. One thing I think we've talked about in a number of committee meetings here is, these hunting contests that kind of pop up all over the country, and by no means am I advocating for, shooting as many of a species as you can for fun and pleasure and stuff like that. That's not what I'm about. That's not what we're about. But some of these bills, the way that they were written, specifically, I can think of there was one in Wisconsin and one in Oregon. Yeah, and they're so broad that if the four of us were on a hunting lease together, and I said I bet you guys $20 I'd kill a bigger deer than you, that's a hunting competition, and then you're in violation of the law and all this stuff, and they're kind of undermining state management authority, and they should let the decisions be made by the director of the agencies and stuff like that.
Let me give you another example of that. So you said that we bet each other. But so I participate in hunting contests, right? So
governors.
the ones I participate.
One-shot animal hunt.
So I
Governors.
participate in what's called the 2-shot goose hunt, and you pay your entry fee, and you're on a team of 2, and you go up and you have a big banquet. It's a small community that puts it on of 4,000, 5,000 people. They put on this huge event. It brings in tens of thousands of dollars, which goes back onto the ground for waterfowl conservation. Sure. So we're having a contest where, there are prizes. There might be a shotgun awarded to the biggest bird, or you get 2 shots, and if each of your teammates kills, cumulative weight of 4 birds, might win a shotgun.
Sure.
It's a competition, but at the end of the day, you're whether you're hunting in a competition or I'm just out in my goose pit with buddies, the result is the same. We're harvesting those birds. They're staying within. We're staying within the legal limit. We're doing it ethically. We're eating what we kill. The difference is everything that we contribute to that through our entry fees and participating in the live auctions and all that money is dumping right back into conservation of waterfowl on the ground. And we've talked about this before, but with waterfowl in particular, we have this new report about the declining number of birds. The 3 billion bird decline in the past 50 years, something like 27%, except
for
waterfowl and raptors.
Yep.
Right, and it's things like these types of hunting contests that actually pump a lot of money to on the ground conservation.
Well, and I think that there's another facet to it that it's difficult for some people to wrap their arms around, which is that it also brings interest.
Sure.
And if you're and to be frank, if you're a purist, if you're like you think that like it's just if the reason that you're out there is just like it's just you and a single animal and it's very personal and nobody needs to be involved, like there are people that it's offensive to them that everyone doesn't have the same motivations, that everyone doesn't see things exactly the same way. And I think that it's what we need to get over in our community in order to continue growing and protecting the future of hunting and the shooting sports is hyphenated hunting. We can't let it be the way that my way is the only right way and your way is wrong if it's not my way. And that's something that, a lot of people who in our community who don't like the 2-shot goose hunt, it's this thing. It's like, They don't like the idea that you're going to go to a pheasant lodge. Well, I'm sorry, but that's a huge, that's a respect the fact that somebody else hunts ducks different than you. Mm-hmm. That's okay. They're on their own path and they're going to get there. As long as we all care about the resource, and this is about keeping those opportunities available for the next generation and improving those opportunities for the next generation, the guy doesn't have to wear the same camo as me.
Right.
And we can be different.
Yeah, I had a chance to see that across the board too, with like the recreation community. If you ever see like e-bike people fight, regular bike people,
all out.
But yeah, there's definitely those tribal divisions. But it's like our slice of we're just a slice of the pie, right? As hunters, like or even just as like hunters in like the general community of land users. So it behooves us to not just be fighting one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which goes to another like challenge, right? Is just better partnering, with other organizations. When we have shared
what do you mean there?
I mean, so like when I was at Interior, we'd put together these like conservation roundtables, right? Where we'd have the full game. We'd literally have, Defenders of Wildlife, but then we'd have, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation in the room. And we talk about things broadly, like you talk about, you say are like migration corridors, and there's different ways that people want to accomplish, like say a migration corridor, but through the conversation we identify, it matters to everyone in that room. So then in there, where do you find those crossovers where people can agree and then actually roll your sleeves up and dive in and start doing the work in that specific area?
Yeah, kind of find that 90% synergy and put the 10% aside.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and it's doable. I mean, I would see it. It would be pretty cool once you get cameras and everything turned off and you just have the conversation. Because everybody in that whole realm cares about the same thing. At the end of the day, it's having that opportunity and natural habitat, for the next generation and beyond.
So how do you do that? I mean, you say that's a challenge, and I agree, it's a huge challenge. Sometimes we organizationally, you're welcome. You weren't going to do it this episode, so I had to do it. Sometimes organizationally, we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yep.
And we're a declining industry, and we have enough battles to fight externally than to be fighting internal battles. So how do you do what you're talking about?
Well, again, I mean, I see it starting with the conversations, identifying where those intersections are, then narrowing that conversation down, seeing, who's serious about addressing this, and then having people, go to work on those specifics.
I'd love to pick on you guys a little bit, Safari Club International, which is, great. I think you guys, you have 50,000 members. You have a lot of clout behind your organization. And as far as an organization that, there are other organizations that tout that, they're the fastest growing, sportsman's organization, that, for hunters. But but you guys don't get a lot of attention because frankly, you're not bomb throwers.
I don't know that we're not bomb throwers, but I think we take strategic punches.
But that's different. You talked about getting together at the table, and the reality is, like, if all you're about is growing membership and getting attention, you talk about Congress at this time of year, throwing bills out there that don't really matter, single stick. The reality is, if you're trying to get attention and trying to get work done, those things aren't always the same thing.
Yeah. We're not exactly set up as like a fundraising machine, whereas it's like credit to like Anna and her team. It's just full-time monitoring what's going to affect hunters and taking it dead serious, having a legal task force to be able to vet it and see, is this an existential threat to hunting? Is this going to erode at our heritage? And once that's identified, moving and working on it. Maybe I take that for granted, but that's what we do at Safari Club. It's what we were doing before.
I was going to say that when maybe the word bomb throwing isn't the right word.
Yeah.
But the threat of the hammer of litigation is used so frequently by groups like Center for Biological Diversity and Defenders of Wildlife, and there has to be a willingness to use that legal tactic. And I shouldn't say tactic. It's in this instance, it's defense of a heritage. Right?
Yep. Somebody's got to stand up and speak.
And that's one of the big bombs, for lack of a better word, that you can throw out there is you can stand up for the sporting community.
Yeah, and what I'm saying though is there's a significant difference between not between
Maybe it's
a group who. So Teddy Roosevelt says it best when he said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick."
I was going to
and
say,
I feel
Dave,
like
it's more
Safari
like
Club
being-
is very much like that. Like you guys
instead
have
of being bombastic, it's being strategic.
You
That's
guys
what I
have
said. We take very
significant
strategic
clout,
punches.
and
Oh,
when
yeah.
you work, you really get
Yeah.
down and you work. Whereas Dave, you picked out Center for Biological Diversity. There are a number of groups out there who like their purpose is to gin up attention, but not necessarily to get work done on the ground.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
different.
Yeah.
I mean, that would drive me crazy with some groups, so like if at Interior you're working on like restore our parks, like taking out the deficit on the backlog, $14 billion backlog in the national parks. And you'd have people representing groups where that was their primary objective. But as soon as they're in the room, they'd be nice, and as soon as they left, they'd send out a tweet saying something terrible.
Yeah, and then nobody wants to work with them anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we can't, how are we going to keep moving this forward? It's like, well, we got to play both sides. We're beholden to our board, but at the same time, we are beholden to our board, right?
Yeah, but but the problem is then when you want to get around the table and work together, like if I'm sitting around the table with you and like, hey, let's get around the table and work together, and then I know when you walk out the door, you're gonna like slap me and you're gonna say all sorts of bad stuff about me. It's really hard for me to invite you back to my table.
It's hard to work in good faith then,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what's another one? You got I know that was sort of three, but there've got to be other significant challenges.
So we had our conservation retreat right when I had started. I didn't go to it, but we had a conservation retreat that was led by I think it's a conservation working group or committee, and our folks over on the foundation side. They did it up in the Upper Peninsula, and they identified as the number one conservation priority for North America being chronic wasting disease. And I know that you guys, I'm going to imagine you've talked about this ad nauseum.
CWD?
Actually,
Not
we
really.
haven't
Never heard of
done-
it.
Yeah, we haven't done any formal podcasts on it. We've talked.
Cool.
We've tossed it out there, but no, love to hear your thoughts on why it's the biggest threat.
Well, it like use the term again, like existential threat, right? It's whitetail. That's the backbone of hunting. Whitetail goes away. That wipes out,
all of the hunters in
all the money
Pennsylvania.
that goes into PR.
So let's talk about how that happens. The issue with CWD, right, is when you say wipes out, the issue is like if people quit hunting,
If people stop hunting, right?
To me, this is a scary thing. And I maybe didn't even want to talk about it on a podcast because like all you have to do, so there are items out there, for example, and I'm going to use one, lead. Like we get people, if people are say like, oh, I don't want to eat deer that was shot with a lead bullet, and you scare people health-wise about that, like it's not reasonable, but it harms hunting. Like, so with CWD, like what if that's a scary thing and people suddenly they're scared to hunt deer, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
If you get people scared to hunt deer, then what?
So I think you're seeing it pop up though on every hunting NGO's list of top priorities. I love the mental challenge of it too. So at Safari Club, it's interesting because we have that broad membership. We represent folks that are on whether they're in the captive bred side of things, but also the free ranging side of things. So it's a fascinating spot to be because we kind of broker those conversations. I've seen it go both ways where they're not both at the table, both communities, and it's impossible to have a serious conversation about addressing it if you don't have both sides at the table because we're all living in the same world, dealing with the same problem. So just having that opportunity to first, it being identified by our, executive committee and board saying this is priority number one. Second, being in the unique position where we can help facilitate that conversation and move it forward.
So you're creating a blueprint, sort of a strategy on how you move forward with a dialogue around CWD.
Yeah, a blueprint. Legislation, working with folks in the Senate. There's a dozen bills out there
Dr.
right
Abraham's
now.
bill and several others for funding and research and stuff like that.
Dozen out there, yeah. So trying to narrow that down and say, what works for National Deer Farmers Alliance, what works for TRCP, what brings everybody together, what can we all get behind? Because everyone's just like, this is the most important thing ever.
And I think we've learned so much about the disease in the last 5 to 10 years, but it's still just scratching the surface of kind of what we're going to end up finding out about it.
Basic research. At the beginning of this year, just seeing like stories being written, like where scientists are arguing that maybe it's not a prion.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Yeah,
well,
there's
we need to figure that
Still
out.
people out there who don't believe it's real.
Oh man, that's scary.
I won't name names.
Well, I think that's the important part is like we have to own it and we have to own the solutions to it, because if we let somebody else define this dialogue for us, if we let external forces try and scare the general public and hunters about this issue, boy, I mean, it could decimate us. We really got to own it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know that you guys need to get going here real soon to support your colleague in, for winning this award tonight. I want to ask. I've got two more questions I want to ask you. One is, and I wish we had about 3 hours to talk to you guys. But one of these things is, okay, so what I've so far heard you talk about the biggest challenges, a lot of them are reactionary. Like we're constantly reacting to things. And this is something I've observed in the hunting community is we're constantly reacting to the next bad bill.
Yeah.
We're constantly reacting to this new disease. And I'm curious from your standpoint. So I think one place where there's an opportunity to do a lot more is instead of on the reactive side is on the proactive side, but there's some resource limitations when you're always responding to being reactive to things. Have you had conversations about that as a team about where are some strategic places where we can be proactive and put together an agenda and push a legislative agenda that can be positive for hunters rather than reacting to bad legislation?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll let you go, and then I'll just go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always better to be for something, to be able to rally people, towards the cause rather than fighting fires and putting them out full time. I mean, I think, one area is like anti-poaching. I think that just paints the picture of what hunting is and what hunting isn't. Mm-hmm. And like you're using the term owning anti-poaching. I think that really draws a clear distinction. I think it brings together strange bedfellows. It gives people to be something for. I've been spending a lot of time since I came on board, just meeting with staff, NGOs, Senate staff, just trying to find, what's that landing place, what's something that we can be for. I mean, I go back to put on my NRA hat. I worked there as a federal lobbyist for almost 7 years. Talk about, that's a group that's always defending, right? But they're also promoting at the same time. I mean, like, right to carry reciprocity. That's always something that's there saying, this is what we stand for, this works, get behind it. That's a shiny object. So being able to find that for the hunting community, I mean, that's the goal. We've had a really big focus, we started recently, so did our new CEO, Laird Hamberlin, with really just digging in, putting together strategic plans, defining our legislative strategy, having something in place so you have processes for putting out the fires, easy, once the process is there, so then you focus on what's proactive.
Yeah, and I think my first government affairs committee meeting with SCI, I was on for maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and kind of a little nervous giving an update. Our entire committee's there, leadership's there, our incoming president, our outgoing president's there, and I'm done with my my presentation, and our incoming president, who's now our current president, Steve Skold, kind of just turns to me and goes, it sounds like we're playing a lot of defense. What are we doing to play offense? And I was like, oh. I was like,
you're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. I didn't know if I had to edit myself. And he's right. But we're in this kind of situation where we do have to play a lot of defense and put out a lot of fires. But I'm going through now with Ben and our, the rest of our team and leadership going into 2020 and looking at a few state houses where, there are things where our members care about and, the average hunter is going to care about and stuff like that. And we're going to outline some priorities and stuff where we want to play offense, still recognizing that when zombie legislation, like Ben said, pops up and, we've got to fight them back, we'll be there, but we should be for something and not just always against it. So.
So I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad because it's been something that's bothered me for a while.
Same.
Is that we always find ourselves playing defense and not being able to play offense, and having those strategic plans and conversations about where we can engage more proactively. I think is incredibly important, not only for fending off bad legislation, getting some good stuff out there, but also, enhancing the profile of the hunting community in general and support for hunting overall. So I need to know how much time you have left, because I have one. The question I want to ask you at the end.
I'll drive you to your.
Sure.
We could do the question and then
Well, so I know that the question I want to ask, but I also know that Nephi wanted me to talk about this lion. I don't know if
No, that's okay.
I just don't know.
I don't know that we have time for the line.
let that hang.
Everybody's been waiting.
The suspense.
Yeah, so maybe.
So
Have us on again.
I'll just bring
There we
it
go.
up over and over again.
Yeah,
Remember
so
that time you lost that guy's lion?
I didn't lose it. But
Is it a happy ending?
Yeah. It's,
Well, it
no,
depends.
sort
So
of.
just like on who you're.
I take
like,
that back. It's sort of a mixed ending.
Not very Hollywood, though.
No.
well, if it was your lion,
I helped a client get a lion back. But I think I've talked about this a
great.
little bit. But I'll tell you offline, and then maybe if people really want to know, we can talk about it in a future
Cliffhanger.
cliffhanger
I
episode.
like it.
Well, I talk about it, but it'd take me 5 minutes to talk about it, and you guys got to get going.
Yeah.
So I'm just not going to do that.
well, I didn't lose it. I don't care.
You keep saying I lost it. I did my job. I helped get this guy's lion back, but we'll talk about that later.
Mission accomplished.
It maybe wasn't in the form he wanted it.
Oh, yikes.
I mean that very literally. It was the taxidermy was done
Okay,
on it. It
go
was in
ahead,
the wrong
go
form. Anyway, so that's for another day. It's a good story though. But I do want to ask you guys. So this is this is the Your Mountain podcast, and on the Your Mountain podcast, we're talking about places that are really important to people involving their land, water, wildlife. We want to know from everybody that comes on this podcast, what's your mountain? What's that place, metaphorically or physically? What's that place to you that is so meaningful, so important that keeps you, that makes you want to do what you do, right? What are those? What is that mountain for you?
You want to go?
Yeah.
All right. Ben's going first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up all over the planet, like Brazil and Chile and all over
Yay,
the
que bom.
U.S. Yeah, que bom. Você fala?
Sim. Eu morei 2 anos em Brazil.
I'm lost.
Very nice.
That's okay. We'll go. We'll
Yeah.
talk.
2 years, Brazil. So many like places that I have a strong connection to, and just my moving around all the time as a kid. My dad's in the Marine Corps. I just had this weird proclivity wherever I visit somewhere, I just become very attached to it. So just thinking of hunting is just awesome for that outlet though, because you fully immerse yourself in like the community that you're going into. You fully immerse yourself into the habitat that you're in, and just one place that just blows my mind that's easy to get to in the United States of America is southwest Louisiana, right?
I did not see that coming.
It's
Yeah,
just
I like that.
it is about as foreign as it comes. So I got like really good friend Chris Carr, and he'll bring me out there, and we're just surrounded with all of his old Cajun buddies, and it's an incredible time. You fortunately get along with all of them because you spend the entire time with them. You don't sleep. They're just nonstop. I don't know where the batteries come from.
Raging Cajuns.
Like, they are raging, and I just love it. And then obviously the speckle belly are as good as it gets and delicious. The gumbo that comes out of it, that's a recipe that's easy to just register to mind. So I always end up going the week before Thanksgiving. So we'll down a bunch of birds, and I'll drive to Austin, where all my in-laws live, and have a fowl fest the night before Thanksgiving. So
It's awesome.
that's
Nice.
such a mountain.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Mountain. Mine's more not metaphorical, but it's not a physical thing, I guess. I don't know. Ben and I both have young children, both have daughters under. Well, Ben's daughter, she just turned 1, right?
She's 13 months
Yeah.
today,
So
as it turns out.
I've
So
got
counting
a-
months.
I've got a little 9-month-old, and I just filled out the paperwork last week to buy her lifetime hunting license in Virginia.
Nice.
So I've
That's
got to go.
awesome.
I got to go turn it in. Which it's like the deal of a lifetime. Like I don't know why everyone doesn't do this for their kids. It's like $120 if they're under 2, it'll pay for itself even if they don't hunt, which is totally fine. But even if they don't hunt, it'll pay for itself in, no time. So, my mountain, I guess, is turning that in, and then again, she's still super little, so we're a ways off from this, but kind of growing with her in the outside, and hoping that she gets the bug to hunt her fish, and kind of, doing all that stuff with her, which will be fun. Mine's much more sappy than Ben.
No, that's
beautiful.
That is great.
Let the air out of the room on that.
That's the beauty of hunting. It's so often it's a generational. It's a family thing.
I'm excited.
Right?
I'm pumped.
And the bonds you build with your family out in the field.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was already ready to buy her lifetime license, even before she was born.
If I could buy preference points for my kid right now,
Well, I'll tell you,
Sign of the family.
I guarantee everybody in this room, that's the reason we all work in the jobs that we work in.
Sure.
Is because we all have that vision of how do we make these opportunities that we love available to our kids.
Next generation.
how do we make sure
Absolutely.
that they're still available
Yeah.
to our kids?
That's
For
the big
every
thing,
one
too.
of us. None of us
It
is
definitely
working
made
in
it.
these jobs.
It definitely made it more urgent once you have a daughter.
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
the job is bigger and more urgent than ever.
Yep.
That's
None-
a fact.
Yeah, none of us are here because we're like, oh, I'm going to be nothing against orthodontists who are super passionate about being that, but
Fill in
it's
the
a
blank.
totally different thing. Like none of us.
So greedy.
Pass
The
on my
orthodontist.
orthodontist dentistry practice.
Dentists. Going back to that, who hunt lions.
Well, now you're just giving away too much.
Hit the bleep button.
Yeah. We'll edit that out. Mark that spot. Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate you guys both taking the time. I know you're on a tight schedule. Appreciate you taking the time
Yeah, this is awesome.
to
Thank you
spend
for
time
having
with
us.
us. To
Thank you.
Talk about Safari Club and the things you do and the challenges we all share. Sharing your mountain with us, indulging the fact that I wasn't going to tell this story. All of that. I appreciate Nephi. I appreciate Mike, who's no longer here. Well, he's here. I say no longer here. He just hasn't been on it for a while.
Not
So I was
yet.
like, oh, Mike's no longer here.
I don't think.
Forgotten.
We think, we all thank you, and please pass along our congratulations to Anna and the
Yes,
rest of the
absolutely.
team. This is, and I know she's receiving the award, but really, Safari Club's receiving the award. It's her good work. It's the good work of the rest of the litigation team. And all the work that you all do that's put her in this position to receive this award tonight. So please pass along our congratulations, although we might be there to say it in person. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let us know when you're in D.C.
Thank
Yeah.
you, boss Tim.
You guys want to come on to our podcast?
Whenever we get up and running
I
off
can,
the
I
ground.
can invite you.
Cross-pollinate.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We'd love to.
get us on the list.
Are
We'd
there
love to.
podcast collaborations like
All
beer
the time.
collaborations?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
All the
Oh, yeah.
time.
You bring the
Right.
hops, I bring the malt.
Cross-promote,
Like, let's do this.
We cross promote all the
Dirty
time.
secret. That's like
That's how everybody.
When you guys are
stays
in
afloat.
D.C., swing by
I
the office.
can't
we'll get you
wait
on.
for our first
Yeah.
cross promotion.
Yeah.
It'll be big. It'll be
Yeah,
good.
no, it'll be huge. I'll be in DC before the end of the year, so we'll figure
Oh, we'll
this out.
definitely
All right,
be
yeah,
ready by then. Yeah,
100%.
we'll get you
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Oh,
We're up.
perfect. Do you want to, since you just mentioned it, do you want to promote your new podcast and then we'll edit that out
I'm gonna
so nobody
feel
knows about
real
it?
stupid
You
if
can
we
tell us what it's
if
called,
we
and then
promote it
people
and
will
then
look-
he
It doesn't
changes the
happen.
name. No,
Changes
he changes
the
the
name.
name.
and-
You'll have to stay
Look
tuned.
for SCI
so-
As
Stay
soon as
tuned.
we hear the lion story, you will
Yeah,
hear
you'll
more
hear more.
about our forthcoming podcast.
That'll be the first story you can tell on the podcast.
Yeah,
Right?
you'll have to come to our podcast.
I'll have you on for that.
Perfect. So look for Safari Club International's podcast coming soon. Subscribe to it after you subscribe to the Your Mountain podcast.
Two phones at once.
Make sure you leave us a ranking on iTunes. Get
Better
out there,
than
support
theirs.
us. It doesn't have to be better. It
Everybody
can be the
can
same.
be
Everybody
five.
gets
Everyone
five
can be
stars.
5 stars.
Everybody
Everyone.
gets 5 stars. Yeah. If 5-star rating, we'd really appreciate that.
5 for 5, right? It's like when you're in an Uber.
That's right.
Yeah.
Say,
That's right.
you give me a 5, I give you a 5.
That's exactly
5 for
right.
5.
That's how it works. And for everybody that's listening, if you haven't given us a rating yet, please go out and do that. We really would appreciate it. Shoot us an email, yourmountain@itsyourmountain.com. Give us feedback there. We'd appreciate it. And remember, as always, that life is about experiences, so go have one.